Her Sports AIL Rugby Show, brought to you by Energia. Think of the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Her Sports AIL Rugby Show, brought to you in association with Energia. Think of the possibilities. You can catch up on this episode and every episode in the series on YouTube and our social channels, or listen to the podcast on every podcast app. Today we'll be discussing the league as it stands, the rise of Wicklow RFC and the developments on an international scale, which is of course the introduction of contracted players here in Ireland. I'm once again joined in studio by former Irish international player Hannah Tyrrell. Hannah, I'd just like to start with, I suppose, a sort of throwback of what the AIL looked like at this point last year, in particular for one team, Wicklow RFC. So you often see people referring in the headlines, what's in the news, to see what's been happening. But if we look back at what was happening 1 year ago, some of the headlines I think are very different than what we see today. So from the Wicklow paper Bray People back in October 2020, they headlined with "Steep Learning Curve Continues for Wicklow." In the Independent 1 year on, so October 2021, the headline was "Women's AIL Players Leave Social Media After Abuse After Big Win." So that was after a big scoreline against Wicklow from Railway Union. And then the Irish Times at the same time led with "The Plight of the Newly Promoted Wicklow RFC." 1 year on from this, we're seeing them in a very different position, aren't we?
Yeah, look, I've been really impressed by Wicklow the last couple of weeks. They're on a 3-game win streak now, coming out of round 7, and you know they're up to 4th in the table, and it's been a huge turnaround. You talk about last year, and unfortunately their very first year in the Energia AIL, and I suppose it took them a little while to come to terms with the structure of the league, but also just the physicality and the tempo that's needed and required at this level. You know, that Railway game, I'm sure, will hurt them for a very long time. Railway put over 100 points on them, you know, and they suffered a couple of heavy defeats against the likes of Belvedere and Blackrock as well last year. But they've really found their feet this year. You know, they had a tough couple of games early on in the season, but as I said, a 3-game win streak. You know, they had a very good win against Galwegians at the weekend, and you know, having been down at their club and played against them, they've a great setup down in their home club down in Wicklow, and they've great support, and their underage structures are in the right way, and Jason Morton has that team just flying. They're full of confidence. They have a really good mix of some veterans like Niamh Drumma, and then some really talented players like the Roberts sisters, Beth and Ella.
And we see Beth there in the points leaderboard, and obviously she is so young. What do you think it means for those players? I suppose her starting out, she would have been 18, 19 last year with the defeats, and now she's seeing the success of the club.
Yeah, like I said, they've kind of got the experience of playing in the AIL, and they know what's needed to be a good side and to chalk out some wins, and they'll have learned from those defeats last year. And I suppose that's all you can ask from these young teams is, you know, can they improve upon their mistakes? Can they get better bit by bit and show in the next game that they're actually a decent and well-coached side with some really good players in there? And you know, Beth and Ella Roberts are one of, I think, 5 sisters that play in Wicklow RFC, which is great to see those family connections. But Beth's been a great kicker for them, and you know, her left boot has kind of kept them in one game some at times, and you know, they're only going to be delighted, and they'll take this confidence into next week's game, and you know, hope they can try and get a semi-final spot that's up for grabs there this year.
And you mentioned there that they're 4th in the table. Can you tell us what that table looks like at the moment?
Yeah, well, unfortunately it's been all change over the last couple of weeks. Old Belvedere, who had been sitting pretty at the top undefeated after round 5, have unfortunately suffered 2 defeats in a row. First to Blackrock and then to Railway most recently this weekend. So Railway have taken top spot in the lead with 6 games played, and Blackrock not too far behind them with Belvedere in 3rd, and Galwegians up in 4th there. Or sorry, apologies, Wicklow up in 4th after leapfrogging Galwegians after this weekend. And unfortunately Ballincollig and Cooke are really struggling at the bottom end of the table, and just can't quite get a win under their belt, and yeah, they've still a couple of tough games to come. So you know, for them it's just can we finish out the season on a positive note, and can we try and improve for next season?
And that Wicklow and Galwegians game, very close in the end. What did you make of it?
Yeah, so look, a 16-14 win to Wicklow. I think it's the beauty of sport. Galwegians were winning for most of the game thanks to a couple of tries. Mairead Coyne getting in on the action, but Megan Parkinson stepped up for Wicklow with an intercept towards the end of the game and won it for them, with Roberts scoring the conversion to win the game. And it was a really great game, tit for tat. Galwegians were missing Nicole Fowley, obviously a big loss for them, but Mary Healy is fully back from her injury now and starting for them and doing really well. But yeah, it's the beauty of sport that, you know, just because you're winning all game doesn't mean you're actually going to win the game and dominate. But Wicklow hung in there. They had some really good defence, really good turnovers, and I felt they were worth their win.
And then UL Bows and Suttonians, a 43-5 win for Bows. What do you think of that? Would Suttonians be disappointed with that, or was it expected?
Yeah, similar to Galwegians. Like, Galwegians would have been very disappointed with that result. They definitely would have thought that they'd get a win over Wicklow to cement their place,
particularly because they've been doing so
and they've
well
been doing really well. And I'd highlighted them previously that they'd played really well, and I thought they might challenge a couple of those kind of top three teams in Belvedere and Blackrock, but they've kind of fallen. It's like they took their eye off the ball a little bit. And Suttonians, unfortunately, has been another team who I thought played really, really well. Love to play some high tempo offloading games, and unfortunately they couldn't get a win. You know, look, we know the quality of UL Bows have had in previous years. They're steeped in history of the women's game. You know, they've some great players like Fiona Reedy. They're obviously led by Niamh Briggs, the new Munster women's senior coach. And they seem to have just had a bit of a revival the last couple of weeks, and they'd really, really suffered the first couple of weeks, got a couple of heavy defeats in there and a couple of unexpected defeats. But Nicole Cronin was back from injury to captain the side and lead them from 10, and she did just that at the weekend with a couple of side-in breaks and setting people off for offloads. And I think it was a really good game to watch because weather wasn't really great, but both those teams like to play high tempo, quick tap games, high energy with lots of offloads. But unfortunately for Suttonians, not a lot of those offloads I suppose fell for them, and Nicole Cronin was kind of running the show for UL Bows the weekend. Claude O'Halloran getting in a couple of tries. I was really impressed with their line-out maul and their scrum set piece that really set them up on their dangerous attack. But Suttonians will be really disappointed. Stephen Costello has had that team playing really good rugby, and they just couldn't really get into gear and show what they were made of at the weekend.
And another team probably disappointed as well as you, I'd imagine. You mentioned there, Old Belvo, a very tight game against Railway.
Yeah, look, I think Old Belvedere will be kicking themselves after that game. You know, we always knew this was going to be a tough one, and I always knew with Old Belvedere that, you know, we were really going to see what they were made of when they came up against the likes of Blackrock and Railway, and this was where we would really see the league start to take shape. So Belvedere obviously lost to Blackrock in round 6. Very disappointing. Never really got a foothold in that game properly, despite the best efforts of Jenny Murphy. But this weekend against Railway, really, really tight game, and Railway managed to snatch it at the death. And it's always been a really tightly contested game. Speaking to Aoife Doyle before the game, you know, she knew it was going to be a tough battle. Unfortunately, Old Belvedere were missing Jenny Murphy this weekend, but Dervla Nicavard I thought stepped up brilliantly. But I was so impressed by Dana O'Brien. At 10, she kicked a couple of penalties, but Railway just have so many resources and so many players available to them that have huge quality. Lindsay Pete's still doing it, as she has done for years for Railway. Carmen Rodrera got her 6th try of the season, again to make her one of the top scorers in the league, and they just have that unbelievable amount of depth and experience to be able to draw upon. Nikki Cahy, you know, back to her best as well, along with Captain Niamh Byrne, and they just managed to work their way in, keep possession despite Old Belvedere's best intentions. Old Belvedere had a knock on the try line, they had a missed penalty and a missed conversion which would have easily won them the game, but Railway went down the other end in the death and unfortunately took the spoils on that one, despite being behind for most of the game. But they're the champions, and there's a reason why they're the champions, and they have been in positions like that before, and they knew what they had to do to get the win, and they did just that. And I just think Johnny Garth and Tanya Rosser, who've been working so well for Old Belvedere, will be really, really going back to the drawing board now after, such a great start to have 2 losses on the bounce against their
You
main
could say
rivals.
they got lucky at the start with the teams they were up against, maybe.
You could say maybe the fixture list helped them a little bit, but I genuinely think they had the quality to beat Railway at the weekend, and unfortunately they just couldn't get themselves over the line, and Belvedere will go back to the drawing board and go, do you know what, if we want to go and win this league, we're going to have to beat one of those 2 teams, if not both. And, I think they have the quality and they really are well capable of it. It's just now, can they actually physically go out and do it?
And then the last fixture from the weekend, 71-7 for Blackrock and Ballincollig. We've seen similar headlines with Wicklow a year ago. It is just the start for this team, but what do you think of that scoreline?
Yeah, look, it's probably no surprise again. Blackrock playing really good rugby this year. Another team who have a wealth of talent at their disposal. Sevens players have gone back, so the likes of Beibhinn Parsons is no longer available to them, but they're still able to call on many former Sevens players as well as many Irish internationals. So they had the likes of Maeve O'Leary and Hannah O'Connor making their first appearances for the season. To be able to have them coming in round 7 for the first time, and make a huge impact. Both of them scored 2 tries. It's incredible, and it's so unfortunate in Ballincollig, who are a team trying to pick themselves up off the foot of the table and get a foothold in the game. But, Blackrock had Maeve Liston and Anna Doyle, both former Sevens players. Ella Durkin from Ulster was also there as well, and they have the likes of Enya Breen there too. They're just incredible. Jackie Shields and Michelle Claffey, also former Irish internationals. You could probably name almost an all-Irish international team at Blackrock, and unfortunately Ballincollig just do not have the strength and depth to be able to deal with them. Blackrock ran rampant and just were full worth their win, but Fiona Hayes will be really, really struggling to pick up their team after that most recent heavy defeat. But I suppose if they are looking for inspiration, they look at the likes of Wicklow and what they're doing there, and they'd be hoping that they maybe can follow suit in the next year or 2 as well and say, look, if they can do it and they're in a similar position to us, why can't we?
And I suppose getting any points on the board, it was 0-40, I think, at half-time, and then they did manage to get over for at least 1 try. So there is small bits coming through. As you said, they got that try against pretty much a team of international or interpros players at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's something that I'm sure Fee Hayes has really instilled in that team, that determination, that belief and that drive to keep going no matter what the score is, finish the game out, and you just keep working on yourself at this point. And to be honest, it was just reward for them to get their try in the end, and it is nice to kind of put a little bit of a gloss on it, I suppose, that you're not held to 0, and I'm sure Railway won't be too happy that they did have their defence breached, but yeah, look, it's baby steps for Ballincollig at this point in time, and it's just about trying to regroup and picking one aspect of every game to try and improve on for the next round. Energia have given us all of this merchandise to give away, so if you want to get your hands on it, all you got to do is comment below on this week's episode out on YouTube.
And we can now take a look back at some of the highlights from the weekend, brought to you by Energia.
So yeah, just obviously looking at one of the Galwegian tries at the weekend. Unfortunately wasn't enough for them, but you can see Mary Healy here at 9 using her forwards really, really effectively to try and I suppose use the width as much as possible and constantly keeping Wicklow guessing, and they just keep on pounding, running it straight up the middle at the Wicklow defence, constantly testing them a little bit, and just a nice tip-on pass catches out the Wicklow defenders who are ball watching and don't really see the late runner, and it results in a really, really easy score, and you can see how much it means to Galwegians there. Unfortunately though, not enough to win the game. We see here obviously Railway on the 5 metre line decided to go for a quick tap, and really, really clever play with a nice switch back into a big ball carrier, Lindsay Peat, and it just manages to catch Old Belvedere light on the short side. Really, really great feat by Carmen Rodrera, as we said, her 6th try of the season, and turns out to be one of those vital scores for Railway in that, and again a tough loss to take for Old Belvedere.
So we seen there in the highlights Old Belvo playing. Obviously they didn't get the win, but Points on the points leaderboard, it's a Belvedere player, Dana O'Brien, you mentioned earlier, right up there at the top, followed by Nicole Fowley at second with 54 points, Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe at 50, Maeve Deely, and then the likes of Beibhinn Parsons, Aoife Doyle and Bet Roberts up there as well. Any surprises there?
No, do you know what, as I said, and again, I'm trying to keep my old Belvedere bias out here, but I've been so impressed by Dana O'Brien this year. Not only, obviously, has she been great for kicking over conversions and penalties for her side, but she's actually chipping in with a couple of tries too. She got a beautiful dummy solo try against Blackrock a couple of weeks ago. She was meant to be kicking at goal and the ball fell off the tee because of the wind, and she just, like, really quick thinking, just took a tap, dummy to Jenny Murphy and was straight through a gap and got her team in the game. And I think she's been really instrumental at kind of pulling the strings at 10. You have to remember she's still very, very young. Mm-hmm. She has been capped at international level, but I actually think she's only going to really improve and be such an asset for Ireland. But she's been great. And, you know, when you're a high-flying, high-scoring team and you're the kicker, you know, you're always going to score an awful lot of points or have an opportunity to score an awful lot of points. And that's why we see Nicole Fowley up there too. She's such an important player for Galwegians. She's great off the tee. You know, they had been doing so well in the early rounds that she's been able to pick up a few points along the way there. The rest of the players you could see, they're either the main kickers in the teams, the likes of Beth Roberts, obviously doing huge things for Wicklow and being a really star player for them. And then you have the likes of the speedsters, Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe getting on the end of things, working her magic. Beibhinn Parsons the same, you know, Aoife Doyle's in there chipping in with a couple of tries as well. These are the guys who, you know, get on the end of team plays for the likes of Belvedere, Railway and Blackrock, and, you know, they get opportunities because their team has such quality.
And then looking ahead to the next round of fixtures, a very important round. So before we get into who's playing who, what does this next round mean for how the league table stands?
So this is the penultimate round. So we've got 2 rounds to go before we head into our semi-final and final. And basically we have a battle at the top because the top four teams are the ones who get into the semi-finals and into kind of the knockout phase. So, you know, these next couple of fixtures will either cement your place in the top 4 or, you know, a disastrous result could mean that you actually can't reach the top 4 at all. And, you know, it's quite tight there at the minute. It's a great battle between Wicklow and Galwegians to see who will get that 4th spot. You know, don't count UL Bows out the running just yet. I think they still have a slight chance, but top of the table now, we have a tasty clash coming up to see who might cement themselves at the top of the leaderboard and get themselves an easier home semi-final.
And the big game, I suppose, then for the weekend, Railway Union and Blackrock. How do you think that's going to go?
Look, I think it's going to be a tasty and entertaining affair. Hopefully both teams are able to put out really, really strong, you know, teams that and lineups that have the best quality that the AIL has to show. This is where we show how good the Energia AIL is and the quality of rugby that's on show. I'm really hoping it's good weather. I haven't checked the forecast yet, but I would hate to see it raining this weekend. But yeah, Railway, Blackrock, they're both top of the table. This is going to really decide who's going to get that number 1 home spot and play the 4th place team in the semi-final in a couple of weeks' time. But can't quite call it yet. It's a repeat of last year's Energia AIL final, and Blackrock will be out for a bit of blood after losing in the way they did last year, but it's always going to be a tasty one. I can't call it who's going to win. I really don't know, but I know both teams will be up for it.
And then one that I think will be a bonus for Ballincollig in that they have somewhat of a chance against Suttonians. How do you think that will go?
Yeah, look, this is an opportunity for Ballincollig. They've nothing to lose at this stage, you know, so they may as well go out and try a few things and see can they get some points on the board first of all, and then could they, you know, get a win at the end of it. Suttonians will come off and, you know, this can go either one of two ways. They can be disappointed with the result of last week and use that disappointment and that hurt to turn around and put in a really good performance like I know they're capable of. Or they could still be a bit uncomfortable and licking their wounds a little bit and feeling sorry for themselves, and Ballincollig could actually catch them at their low point there. I really hope we get a good entertaining game, and you know, my heart would love for Ballincollig to get the win, but I just think Suttonians have a bit too much quality in them.
And you mentioned already that UL Bow's going through a bit of a revival, so it might be a difficult game then for Cooke, do you think?
this season, and I don't think that's going to change. You know, they've picked, they're coming up against a team that have just turned a little bit of a corner. You know, they still have a way to go, but UL Bulls will be very happy with their result last week. As I said, the emergence and the return of Nicole Cronin has done wonders for them, and yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy week again for them, unfortunately.
And considering you'll be back in Old Belvo, I might back Wicklow for the next game. Wicklow and Old Belvo, obviously Old Belvo is probably the better team, but how do you think that's going to go, especially given Wicklow's win last week?
Well, it's a team of, you know, contrasting weeks, in that, you know, Wicklow are on a 3-game win streak and they're flying high. You know, they'd be fairly confident with trying to retain that 4th spot. They'd be willing to have a crack at anybody because we know they play good rugby and they have a good little team behind them. You know, but Belvedere, on the other hand, you know, they're coming off a 2-game loss, albeit against the 2 best teams in the competition, but they would have liked to at least win one of those, if not both. You know, so they'll be looking to try and cement their place in 3rd place, maybe even leapfrog Blackrock into 2nd, but could be a tasty one. I still do think Old Belvedere on paper have the quality and the depth and experience there, but Wicklow are high flying, and, you know, sport is full of surprises sometimes.
So the game to go to next week, which one do you think?
Oh, Railway Blackrock, without a doubt. And that's hard to say being from Old Belvedere, but it's hopefully going to be the most entertaining and the one that shows off the quality of the Energia AIL the most.
So starting with the Independent last week, we had captain Nicola Friday among notable absentees as IRFU confirmed 10-15 contracts taken up. Also from the Indo, we had women's rugby strategic plans remain unclear. RTE went with flexibility on non-contract players will help Ireland women. And then from the 42, we had contracts are not a cure-all for Irish women's rugby, but this is a start. So that's what the papers are saying. But talk us through what's happening, I suppose, on the ground. So players have signed contracts and they now are professional athletes here in Ireland.
Yeah, look, this is a step forward for women's rugby in Ireland. You know, we're one of the last nations to take up some contracts and bring us into that kind of semi-professional era, but, you know, it's not without its teething problems, and we've seen this with the contracts that have been offered. So I think we had 37 people were offered contracts by the RFU, and we had 29 of those taken up. Unfortunately, just, I suppose, with the way the contracts have been offered and some of the kind of eligibility side of things with the contract, we have some of our best players and our international players playing over in England, and some of those have decided that for whatever reason, be that personal or rugby, that they have declined their offers. And unfortunately for us, some of those are our leading and standout players, and the likes of Niamh Jones, recently voted as Player of the Year, Sam Monaghan, who I think had an incredible year for Irish rugby, and of course Captain Nicola Friday turning down a contract. All those players play in the UK, and the contract, taking up a contract would have meant they would have had to relocate back to Ireland and play in the Energia AIL here, which of course we would have loved to have had them, but a lot of them I think felt morally obligated to stay in the UK with the club they'd signed for. We do end up having 29 players signed, which is an absolutely great move for women's rugby in Ireland. How that's going to pan out, it remains to be seen, and what happens to those players who have turned down a contract offer in terms of their international career. Is the door still open for them? Are they going to be, you know, behind in terms of pecking order or anything else like that? Like, how that's all going to work is still a little bit up in the air, to us looking on from the outside. But, you know, it is a step forward. Hopefully we can really start to improve the standard that we have here, and we can start to really compete in next year's Six Nations. And we have a couple of months, obviously, to kind of get all this flowing. We're only really in the first couple of weeks of this kind of professionalism and this era. So, you know, this won't happen overnight, but it is a great stepping stone. But there is a little bit of, I suppose, teething problems that go along with it. And we certainly can't afford to leave the likes of Sam Monaghan, Nicola Friday and Niamh Jones out of our squad. And yeah, it's a work in progress, I think.
And who are some of the players that have signed those contracts?
So we had a lot of kind of dual players between 7s and 15s, the likes of Emily Murphy-Crowe, Stacey Flood, Lucy Mulhall, but then we also have the likes of Maeve O'Leary has taken up a contract, Catherine Dane, Linda Jugang. They're all a couple of others. Aoife Wafer, I think, has also picked up another. You know, so there's 29 players in all who have, and I don't want to be always focusing on the negative and those who haven't. Those 29 players have now stepped into a new role, and for them that they're able to give themselves every opportunity of being the best player that they can be in the wonderful facilities that we have up in the National Sports Campus. So, you know, it's an incredible opportunity for them. I'm sure many of them growing up had dreams that they would be a professional rugby player, and many of them thought it mightn't have been possible. So, you know, for them, it's a dream come true, and I really, really hope they can grab that opportunity with both hands and make an Irish jersey theirs and really improve the standard across Ireland.
So do you think it's fair to say that the 42's headline, you know, it's not a cure-all, but it is a start? Is that a fair assessment of where we're at?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think we were ever going to fix the problem. You know, I think we were pretty disappointed in the end after last year's Six Nations. You know, particularly that loss to Wales was really, really damning for us. You know, and obviously looking back the last couple of years, we didn't make the Rugby World Cup. So we have a way to go to make rugby in Ireland for women a much better standard than it is now. This is a start, and as I said, it's not going to be fixed overnight. So yeah, I think the 42 have got it spot on, that it has fixed some problems, but we still have a way to go.
With that, we'll leave it there. Be sure to check out the next round of AIL Games taking place this Saturday at 5 o'clock, and we'll be back in the next episode to discuss the results. Although she didn't line out for them at the weekend, her sport caught up with Beibhinn Parsons to see what she has been up to, and that's up next.
I'm scared what you're going to bring up, honestly.
Can you tell us what is happening in the photo there, the first photo there?
Yeah, so basically both of the girls there, Emily and Maeve, they're my two club mates from Ballincollig. So obviously me and Emily were playing against each other. So that's major rivals, and then Maeve wasn't actually playing. So we just had a bit of a reunion picture. But the caption, first cap, better than my first cap song, is because I was trying to get out of my first cap song because I've been here so long, but I haven't made my debut. So I thought that could warrant me just like running off after the game, but it wasn't allowed at all. So I sang Galway Girl.
And how did that go?
Oh, horrendous. Like, honestly, the worst thing ever.
So what's
Oh my
happening
God. Yeah, this is Ballincollig. I don't even know what year this is, but that's Maeve in the middle holding the trophy. So we obviously won. I presume we were playing against Westport because they were like our biggest rivals at home. But yeah, absolutely love playing with them. Oh my God. Can I pause this? Oh, stop. This was, yeah, that's just Mayvogue forcing us all to do TikToks. She's so funny, like she loves doing it. But yeah, just one evening, bored at camp, so a way to entertain ourselves. Yeah, this is just me with an award, basically. I don't even know what to say about it, really. Yeah, it's a really proud moment to get given that award. Obviously, with a team sport, like, the team comes first, so try not to think too much into those type of awards, because at the end of the day, like, the only success is the team success, really. Oh.
To get away into the wide channels. Boatman herring away. Beibhinn Parsons is with her. Can she lay a finger on Boatman? She can. Norman Bell is there to secure the ball. But then Ireland counter. And the penalty comes in. Boatman raced away from
something out of nothing. She is tiptoeing ever so close to the side edge of the field, getting the...
Yeah, no, some people show me that and think like it's a highlight reel, but for me, like, I missed the tackle at the start, so I actually hate seeing that clip. But it was just really good that, like, my favourite thing from that clip is the whole team chasing back, and how like we talk about green in the screen, so like you can see as the screen goes back, like obviously I'm chasing back, but my whole team is, and that's what allows us to get the turnover. So that's my favourite thing about the clip. I actually hate it because I missed the tackle to begin with, but yeah. This one is my first cap. It was a really proud day, especially for like my parents and all my club mates that came up and watched, and just family members. Like, yeah, it was a really special day, and it's one I will never forget.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the AIL Rugby Show, brought to you in association with Energia. Think of the possibilities. You can catch up on this episode and every episode in the series on YouTube and our social channels, or listen to the podcast on every podcast app.
Her Sports AIL Rugby Show, brought to you by Energia. Think of the possibilities.